London, 1932. A city of fog and secrets. A city where the rich lived by different rules. And one woman was about to prove exactly how different those rules were. Her name was Elvira Barney, and before the year was out, she would shoot a man dead, walk free from court, and the world would never quite forget her name. Picture the scene. Mayfair, London's most exclusive neighborhood. Streets lined with the townhouses of earls and viscounts. Chauffeurs waiting outside private clubs. Women in pearls and diamonds stepping out of gleaming black cars. This was Elvira's world. She was born into it. She owned it, or so she thought. Her father was Sir John Mullins. Not just wealthy, not just connected, he was the financial advisor to King George V himself. A man so powerful in the city of London that when he spoke, markets moved. When he gave an order, people obeyed. Every person, except one. His daughter, Elvira Dolores Barney, beautiful, reckless, unstoppable, and absolutely determined to live life entirely on her own terms. From the moment she entered society, Elvira was trouble. The good kind, if you were watching from a distance. The dangerous kind, if you were close enough to get burned. She drank too much. She laughed too loudly. She stayed out until dawn and slept until noon. She threw parties that scandalized her neighbors. And she didn't care, not even slightly. In 1928, at the age of 23, she married John Sterling Barney, an American cabaret performer, a singer, a man her father considered completely beneath her. The English aristocracy was outraged. Sir John Mullins was furious. He ordered his daughter to return to London immediately, without her husband, or lose her allowance. Elvira came home, alone. The marriage was over almost before it began. But Elvira Barney was just getting started. After the collapse of her marriage, Elvira spent time in Paris. Paris in the early 1930s was a playground for those with money. Jazz clubs, champagne, beautiful people with nowhere to be and all night to get there. And it was in Paris that Elvira met him, Michael Scott Stephen, 23 years old, blonde, pink-cheeked, charming in the way that only truly irresponsible people can be charming. Michael was, by any objective measure, a disaster. He had no job, no income, no prospects. He had been living off a French dancer from the Folies Bergère, who loved him, and who was waiting patiently for him to marry her. And then Elvira arrived, like a hurricane in an evening gown. She hired Michael as her private secretary. She took him everywhere. She paid for everything. And slowly, inevitably, their relationship became something far more complicated than employer and employee. The French dancer was forgotten. Paris was left behind. And Michael Stephen followed Elvira Barney back to London, into a world he was completely unprepared for, and from which he would never return. Back in London, Elvira installed herself and Michael in a flat in William Mews, Knightsbridge, one of the most fashionable addresses in the city. And there, behind the elegant facade of Mayfair society, the relationship began to rot. Because Michael Stephen and Elvira Barney were not good for each other. They were volatile, they were passionate, they were destructive. The neighbors heard them constantly. Screaming matches in the early hours. Doors slamming. Voices raised to a pitch that made respectable people pull their pillows over their ears and wish they lived somewhere quieter. There were parties. Wild parties. The kind that left the flat wrecked and the neighbors furious. And there were fights. Terrible fights. Fights that frightened people who witnessed them. One neighbor testified that on one occasion she saw Elvira lean out of an upstairs window, screaming at Michael as he walked away down the street below. She screamed at him, "Laugh, baby. Laugh for the last time." And then she produced a revolver and fired. The neighbor watched in horror. Michael kept walking. Whether she fired at him or simply into the air was never conclusively established. But this much was clear. Elvira Barney owned a revolver. She was not afraid to use it, and the man she loved was beginning to look for a way out. By the spring of 1932, Things between Elvira and Michael had reached a breaking point. Michael had changed. The wild life that had once seemed exciting now felt suffocating. He was tired of the parties, tired of the drinking, tired of the screaming matches at 3 in the morning. He was thinking about Paris, about the quiet life he had left behind, about the dancer who had loved him without drama, without gunshots, without chaos. And Elvira knew it. She could feel him pulling away. And for a woman like Elvira Barney, that was the most dangerous thing in the world. The night of the 31st of May 1932 began like so many others. A party, drinks, music, the glittering social world that Elvira inhabited spinning on as it always did. Elvira and Michael came home in the early hours. It was past 3 in the morning. The mews was quiet. The neighbors were asleep. And then Michael opened his letters. Among them, a letter from Paris, from the dancer, telling him that Elvira had arranged to have her fired from the theater where she worked. Deliberately, calculatedly, to cut the last thread connecting Michael to the life he wanted to return to. Michael exploded. The argument that followed was the worst they had ever had. Michael wanted out. He wanted to leave. He wanted to walk out of that flat, get on a train, and never come back. He moved toward the door. And then, a shot. A doctor living nearby received a telephone call. It was Elvira. Her voice was barely recognizable. "Doctor, come at once. There has been a terrible accident." The doctor arrived at William Mews within minutes. He found Elvira in a state of complete hysteria. And on the stairs, Michael Scott Stephen, shot through the body, dead, on the floor nearby. A revolver. Elvira's revolver. The police arrived quickly, and Elvira, through her tears, through her hysteria, through the shock and the chaos of that terrible night, told them what had happened. She had been threatening to shoot herself. She had been suicidal, she said. Michael had tried to take the gun from her. There had been a struggle, and in the struggle, the gun had gone off. It was an accident, a terrible, devastating accident. That was her story, and she never changed it. Not once. Not under questioning at the scene. Not at the police station. Not at the trial. Not for the rest of her life. But the police were not convinced. Because there were things about that night that didn't fit the story of an accident. A witness had heard Elvira scream, just before the shot, "I will shoot you." Not, "I will shoot myself. I will shoot you." The pathologist examined Michael's body and reported that the shot appeared to have been fired deliberately, at close range. And then there was the matter of a second bullet, found embedded in the bedroom wall, fired, at some earlier point, from the same revolver. Elvira had an explanation for that too. She said she had fired it previously to frighten Michael during an argument. Not at him, just to frighten him. An explanation that raised more questions than it answered. The police made their decision. Elvira Dolores Barney was arrested and charged with murder. The newspapers went wild. In a country gripped by economic depression, unemployment, hardship and misery, the story of the beautiful socialite who shot her young lover in a Mayfair flat was exactly the kind of scandal that sold papers by the million. Sir John Mullins, financial advisor to the king, saw his daughter's face on every front page. The trial of Elvira Barney was coming, and all of England was watching. In our next episode, we go inside the courtroom. We hear the witnesses who said they heard her threaten to kill him. We hear the defense that shocked even the judge. We witness the verdict that made one man so furious, he spat at the jury in open court. And we ask the question that has never been fully answered. Did Elvira Barney get away with murder? Subscribe to Story Hour USA, because the most dramatic hour of this story is still to come.